Hey, everybody. Thanks again, Mitch. That was a fantastic talk. It's been a fantastic event so far. And our next speaker has been doing incredible work both on the forefront and behind the scenes. He is a professor at Stanford University, and he's been doing incredible research on this topic for just about a decade now. He's, he's the owner of several patents and companies dealing with technologies, and he's just been doing incredible work. So everybody, welcome Dr. Garry Nolan.
Alien metamaterials. I got to keep a close eye on them. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you to all the organizers. It's great. And thank you guys for your interest. And frankly, thanks to Mitch, that was such a powerful set of statements that he made that I feel like he's just underlined everything that we've been talking about offline with other individuals about how do we get around the problem of the skeptics. And I wanted to give an example of something of what Mitch was actually just talking about, again, from my mainstream work, because it is that sort of liminal boundary space that we need to bring both sides of the extremes, both the far woo, let's call it, and the far hard sciences to that place at the middle where we can reach across some bridge or create a bridge of attempt to understand. So in cancer, for instance, there's a place where the immune system comes together with the cancer. And without going into all the gory details of it, we developed the mathematics around which we find that as cells group together for some, let's say, transient abstract function that most immunologists don't understand, there'll be a large area of them that come together and a large area of another kind of cells that come together and they're doing something. And it turns out that it's not the large grouping and of how it is that they're functioning that's as important. It's what's happening at the boundary. And so we had a big paper that just came out that said it's in here at the boundary that interesting things are happening. This is where we can, out of a single biopsy from the patient, look and do perturbation experiments because boundaries of perturbation. So it's the same thing that, for those who might have been following Twitter, that I occasionally go on, much to my detriment, is when we're talking about small paper about oh, there it goes. Oh, sorry. Okay, I'm not used to this. So Avi's paper, where he basically was saying, look, because the distance measurements were so up, I could just as easily believe that those things were 10 times closer than they were. And so the whole idea of them being UAPs, but traveling at superluminal velocities, et cetera, could be wrong. I mean, he wasn't saying they were wrong. He's just saying that because there was such a divergence in the distance, even people within the community, on the inside, were a little pissed that he didn't consider UAPs. And my point is, he shouldn't, right? If you're going to publish a paper in science, you have to use the language of science, and you might dare put it in the discussion where you're allowed to speculate, but I think that's the right way. And so, and he's coming from a place where I think 6 or 7 months ago, he wouldn't have even considered UAPs as part of even a discussion. But now I know that aspects of the Galileo project are at least looking for them. Now, I come from the other side of this. I come from the side where I do know that there's something going on, right? I mean, not the least of which I saw something, right? And you all know those stories. But I know that there's people on my mainstream side that I need to convince of something. So I need to use the language that they speak to drag them closer to the center. And then because I'm on your side, I need to teach you, or I'm trying to teach at least people who are listening. I consider my, 20,000 people on my Twitter feed kind of my online class. Here's the language that you use. And the first one that you've probably heard is me saying, get them to believe the data. If you can make them understand that the data is real, there is no escape. Right? They will have to think about, and you don't let them ask you what the data means. Ask them what they think the data means. Because asking a question, actually, it's a very rabbinical approach. Asking a question is an attack on the mind. That's why teachers ask questions. Hey, Gary, pay attention. Stop looking out the window. And they ask a question because it's an attack on the mind. And actually, if you do the neurological studies, you see that a question lights up the fight or flight area. And so ask them the question, and if they don't want to answer, that's okay. But you've probably planted a seed in their minds that will take them somewhere to understand that there's a different outcome than just saying no, or the incredible evidence need incredible, claims, or whatever that stupid thing is. And so, yes, I understand that that's really the case, but it's not. It shouldn't be something that's used all the time, just like Occam's razor. You can cut yourself with Occam's razor, and so let's just move away from that. So that's part of what I think we as a community need to do, is start to learn the language of science, of how it is that you convince people with evidence, and don't retreat to, okay, well, it's a quantum field of blah 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 that explains this. No, just like, okay, well, at least show that it can't be something which is normal physics, right? So and there's ways that you can do that. So my challenge was, at least online to people, is if you don't agree with Avi, prove that the distance metric is where the Ukrainians said that it is, right? Or show that there were no artillery around at the time. And then the conversation starts respectfully. And that's really, I think, part of what Mitch was just talking about. So it was a perfect launching point from that. So that was really what I wanted to start with, just to kind of get the flavor of where I want to go. And now we're going to move into some of the questions that people wanted to have. And we have some that are from basically online, and then maybe we'll take some from in here. I feel much better giving I'm not as good as Mitch is, that he just did, at being able to just, go off.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Gary. From the questions that have come through online, which have been absolutely fantastic, we'll take a couple, and then we'll start moving into some from the room, and we'll go back and forth. Gary,
is there some water? Can somebody get me a water bottle or something? Non-psychedelically laced. Then I'll really start saying some interesting stuff. Truth serum.
Yeah. So, Gary, I'll just, as Kelly gets that water, one question that came in was, I'm curious if you've looked at if there are similarities between brain abnormalities in experiencers and lifelong meditators. The range of values is specific because it's mentioned in the Gard et al. 2015 paper. I assume you know what that means. I certainly don't. Related to understanding how contemplative practices affect brain functional organization. I ask also because throughout ET contact cases, there's often consistent messages from these others regarding...
Okay, stop.
Okay. Sounds good. Yep.
Okay. We can get to the second part in a second.
For sure.
Okay, so the question is about brain structures related to, let's say, extra normal capabilities, right? And as you all know, in the work that I had done with Kit Green and actually Colin Kelleher and Jacques and Al Puthoff, we were all working more or less together at this time, looking at these patients who had been harmed by one or more different modalities. We noticed a common feature amongst them, which was an area, a density in the head of the caudate and putamen in the basal ganglia. All right, and I've talked about this, and if you don't know about it, there's probably a few good websites that would follow up on it if you wanted to go read them. But the long and the short of it was that there was much more neural connections in this area of the brain than we found compared to so-called normal people, the muggles, right? It's dangerous. That's very dangerous. That's okay. My secret admirer out there will surely title his next blog about this. So the issue is, okay, well, wow, this is interesting. And we actually first thought when we saw it that it was some kind of damage. We thought that it was part of the damage, the random damage that we were seeing, but random damage doesn't show up in the same place all the time. So when we went into the literature, we found that this particular level of density actually wasn't observed in most people. And so then, for those of you who know the story, Kit went and looked at 100 random people from basically standard databases, showed that that density level was not there. And he actually came up with the conclusion that he called them high functioning. He would sometimes use the word savant, et cetera. But basically people of high function who had, let's say, certain abilities. Well, not abilities. They just were high functioning individuals, smart people. But it was when he threw in a couple of individuals who were so-called remote viewers that it really hit home what we thought we were seeing. It was the remote viewers that actually were at the top of the scale in terms of the density. So that was interesting. And, coincidences don't often happen in anywhere. I mean, in biology especially. And it's not a conclusion, but it's a speculation. And again, I'm going to use this constantly. Most of what I say is speculation until proven. But that we saw this there and we realized and we intuited this is about intuition. Because what is RV? At least in the most best understanding of what RV might be. Even in a mainstream interpretation of what remote viewing is, somewhere you're picking up these signals. It's in your environment. It has nothing to do with spookiness, but you're intuiting something with sparse data. That's how we think about it, sparse data. And so then we started looking in the literature, and right about that time, the mainstream literature in medicine was basically saying that this is the area of the brain that lights up when you have an intuitive spark and a moment. So it makes sense then that that the more of these connections that you might have, perhaps the more processing you can do per unit time. So, okay, that's great, but that is there's a lot of bias confirmation in there that, as Mitch would say, that needs to be reckoned with. So what I decided to do, because at that point in time, a lot of the database that Kit had collected, we found out was, in fact, many of these people apparently had actually Havana syndrome and had nothing to do with any anomalous encounters. Havana syndrome is anomalous in and of itself, but so those actually, access to those MRIs, I never had any access to them except for the ones that I put in for my family. But those all got taken away anyway. So I said, okay, well, science has to be reproducible. So what did I do? I hooked up with the neurophysiology lab at Harvard. We went into a totally different database, and we then wrote artificial intelligence algorithms that would take an MRI, break it down into where all the regions of the brains are, the caudate putamen, medulla, et cetera, everything. And you can basically figure out what the surface area is, volumes. You can figure out what the connectome is, where one area of the brain has tracks to the other. Because, why do that? Why not just focus on the caudate putamen? That's where you already said that it is, Gary. It's because we know that the brain is a network, and the network has feedback loops, and you might have something smaller here, but you compensate there. If you do have a large caudate putamen and you are processing more information, then you're going to, by necessity, you're going to have a large bandwidth of neurons to pass that information to somewhere else. It just kind of makes sense. So there are these network diagrams that you can automatically find, which we did. And lo and behold, the data held true. Caudate putamen, particularly the caudate volume and size, correlated with intelligence and emotional reasoning and basically dynamic reasoning. So perfectly, and this was all done with British and German data. But we went a step further, because if you want to publish this, the first paper that we're going to publish is not going to be on remote viewers, right? The first paper we're going to publish, and we did publish, was basically just a baseline medical study, and because we infused normality, in the study of normality, with two different diseases, let's say. And not necessarily diseases, but let's just say, well, one of them was schizophrenia, and the other was autism. So we had databases of autistics and databases of schizophrenics with all the same measurements done across them. And lo and behold, there were major differences, and we've published this. So what was I doing there? What was the purpose? Well, first of all, what I think autistics and schizophrenics are, they are extremes of human capabilities. We all know that many autistics have the ability to, any number to the 10th power square root thereof, instantaneously. How the heck they do that, I don't know. On the other hand, you have schizophrenics that see things that aren't supposed to be there, right? Or are highly creative, right? So I found this database, creating that database of what is out there already in the population, is the perfect comparator against which, when it was great to hear who showed that, I think it was Darren maybe who showed that they're collecting a database of individuals who are experiencers and collecting all the MRIs, et cetera. That database would be the perfect now test base. I don't have to go do it myself. You guys would have the data, because now we have a comparison database of what is normal, and where a skeptic might accuse you of basically saying, well, all you did was collect a bunch of schizophrenics, right? Because now I can show that that the structure of the brain of what we now know to be a schizophrenic is different than the structure of the brains of these RV people, right? So the short answer is to the asker, no, we haven't done that yet, but because science needs patience, and we needed to go through the steps to create this normal database and to get it into the literature. I mean, I'm not known as being a brain surgeon or a brain specialist, but now I have another paper of ours just got accepted in this area. Now we have a bit of a track record and the experience to go back in and look at this stuff, and then to do the comparisons that will make sense. Because I can promise you, I will publish a paper on people with RV. So. And I don't care. I'm tenured. I've sold 11 companies. They can go, and you know what's exciting? And again, I have to credit Mitch here. The number of people who are now starting to be interested in this, that are serious professionals, even in the sciences. I mean, I just went to give a talk at interestingly, the Roswell Institute up in Buffalo. How synchronistic is that? And it's a cancer center. And at dinner, fancy place, the Buffalo Club. God, it was like one of those big fancy, places with lots of wood and everything from the 18th century. And all they wanted to talk about was this, because everybody knows that I do it. So, and it used to be that I would get introduced and be a bit of a giggle about it. And now people use it as, it's like, oh, Gary's willing to do this. And then afterwards, everybody wants to talk about it. So, I think the acclamation that Leslie Kean and Lou and Chris and many others initiated here is beginning to move out, and the ripple effect is broader than you want. Still not where I want it to be, but it doesn't need to be everywhere. I think people who want immediate disclosure, we need a place of solidity with data that can be that can be validated and defended before you go out preaching, because otherwise you truly are just preaching a religion. Because if 30% of the world already believes in what we're talking about in one form or another, the 70% that are caught in a materialist viewpoint, for good reason why they're there, they're not convinced yet. And if we think we need to convince them, then we have to take it this slow process. Anyway, that's just my